Michael Jordan finds out a bullied teen was suspended for fighting back. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Michael Jordan's story begins in Wilmington, North Carolina, a town that wasn't known for producing basketball legends. His early years were filled with the same challenges that many young athletes face: underappreciated, overlooked, and often doubted. Yet it was these very challenges that shaped Michael into the player he would become, and ultimately, the icon he is remembered as. The story of Michael Jordan isn't just about talent, it's about relentless work, an insatiable desire to be the best, and a mindset that nothing would stop him from achieving his goals. Growing up in Wilmington, Jordan was the fourth of 5 children in the Jordan family. His parents, James and Dolores, were a grounded, supportive force in his life. James was a businessman, and Dolores worked in a bank, but both were passionate about instilling a strong sense of discipline and responsibility in their children. The Jordans emphasized hard work and a no-excuses attitude in everything they did, whether it was at home or in sports. For Michael, basketball was his true love, but his early years didn't reflect the same success that would come later. In fact, he wasn't always the best player on his teams, nor was he the tallest or most physically imposing player. Yet, what set him apart from many of his peers was his undying determination and his ability to rise to the occasion when faced with adversity. In high school, Michael's first major setback came when he was cut from the varsity basketball team during his sophomore year. It was a devastating blow. A cut player at such a critical point in a young athlete's career could have shattered his confidence, but for Michael, it was the fuel he needed to keep going. While other players might have doubted themselves, Michael Jordan's resolve grew even stronger. He spent hours upon hours practicing, refining his game, developing skills that would eventually make him one of the most versatile players in the history of the sport. He understood that natural talent alone wouldn't be enough; he had to outwork everyone around him. Jordan's focus was laser-sharp. He didn't just play basketball, he studied it. He studied the best players, watched their every move, and learned how they thought the game. Whether it was the way they moved on offense or how they positioned themselves on defense, Jordan took notes. That attention to detail became a hallmark of his career. He returned the next year with a vengeance, not just making the varsity team but dominating it. His relentless work ethic soon paid off when he became a standout in high school basketball, drawing the attention of college scouts across the country. However, college wasn't always a guaranteed destination for a player from a small town like Wilmington. Jordan's high school career made waves, but it was clear that he wasn't yet the polished player who would become an NBA legend. That was something he still had to prove. When he received his scholarship to play at the University of North Carolina under legendary coach Dean Smith, it marked a turning point in his life. The decision to attend UNC wasn't just about basketball, it was also about growth. Dean Smith, one of the greatest college coaches in history, would be the mentor Michael needed to refine his game and develop the mental toughness that would define his career. At UNC, Jordan learned how to play the game on a deeper level. Dean Smith taught him the importance of team play, unselfishness, and the value of hard work. Jordan's natural athleticism was undeniable, but he began to understand that basketball was more than just about scoring. It was about making those around him better and understanding the bigger picture of the game. Jordan's improvement was immediate. His freshman year, he made an impact on both ends of the floor, helping lead the Tar Heels to a national championship. In the final moments of the game against Georgetown, it was Jordan's clutch jumper that sealed the victory. That championship moment, though just the beginning of his basketball journey, proved to everyone watching that Michael Jordan was destined for greatness. What made Jordan stand out, even then, wasn't just his scoring ability or athleticism, it was his mentality. He had an unrelenting drive to improve, to be the best, and his ability to take over in big moments set him apart from others. He wasn't just a scorer, he was a leader who could control the game, change the momentum, and raise his teammates' level of play. His success at UNC cemented his reputation as one of the best young players in the country, but it was clear that he wanted more. He wanted to be the best player in the world, not just in college basketball. Jordan's time at UNC wasn't just about on-the-court success. His experience there shaped the way he approached the game and life. Jordan learned the importance of discipline, team unity, and how to lead by example. His relationship with Coach Dean Smith taught him how to handle adversity, how to respond when things didn't go his way, and most importantly, how to use challenges as stepping stones to greater achievements. As Jordan honed his craft in college, he also learned to embrace the weight of expectation. As much as his basketball ability was growing, his understanding of responsibility, of what it took to be the best, was maturing at an equal pace. By the time Jordan left UNC and declared for the NBA draft in 1984, he was ready for the next step. He was no longer just a college star, he was a player who had the potential to change the landscape of professional basketball. The NBA was full of great players, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but Jordan had the one thing that set him apart from all of them, the mindset that he could be better than all of them. He was driven by something more than just the game. He was driven by the belief that he could achieve the impossible. When the Chicago Bulls selected Michael Jordan with the 3rd overall pick in the 1984 NBA draft, it was the beginning of something much bigger than anyone could have imagined. Jordan's arrival in the NBA was more than just a shift in the league's balance of power, it was the start of a new era in basketball. The Bulls, who had been struggling for years, suddenly had the player who could elevate the entire franchise. Jordan's individual brilliance would soon be on full display, but it was his desire to lead, to improve, and to push beyond what others thought was possible that would ultimately make him a legend. Jordan's rookie season would be his introduction to the world of professional basketball. But what separated him from the other rookies wasn't just his ability to score, it was his willingness to learn, his ability to adjust, and most importantly, his unwavering confidence in his own ability to be the best. Even then, Jordan showed that it wasn't just about the numbers, it was about the mindset. The mentality of being the greatest was already forming, and it would soon take over everything he did. Michael Jordan's rookie season with the Chicago Bulls was the beginning of what would become a legendary career, but it didn't come without its hurdles. The excitement surrounding his arrival was palpable, but so was the pressure. Drafted as the 3rd overall pick in the 1984 NBA draft, Jordan was expected to instantly transform a struggling franchise into a contender. But despite his immense talent, he wasn't stepping into a team filled with championship aspirations. The Bulls were in the midst of rebuilding, and Jordan's challenge wasn't just about proving he was the best player on the court, it was about turning around an entire organization. From the start, it was clear that Jordan was more than capable of meeting the challenge. His first game in the NBA was a statement. He scored 16 points, but it was the way he did it, his confidence, his flair, and his unmistakable ability to impact every part of the game that caught everyone's attention. Jordan wasn't just a scorer, he was a force of nature. His athleticism was unmatched, and his hunger to dominate every possession made him stand out. His individual brilliance was on display every night, as he put up impressive numbers, averaging 28.2 points per game during his rookie year, winning the NBA Rookie of the Year award. Despite Jordan's success, the Bulls still had a long way to go. The team finished the 1984-85 season with a 38-44 record, which, while an improvement, was still far from playoff contention. Jordan was carrying the load, but there was a clear sense that a lone superstar could only take a team so far. Chicago needed more than just a great individual player, they needed a system, a team that could complement Jordan's talent and help him achieve the ultimate goal of winning a championship. At the same time, the NBA itself was evolving. The rivalry between teams like the Los Angeles Lakers, Boston Celtics, and Detroit Pistons was intensifying, and the level of competition was increasing with every season. Jordan had entered a league filled with Hall of Fame talent, and while his individual accomplishments were growing, the ultimate test was whether he could lead the Bulls to success on the grandest stage. Off the court, Jordan was already becoming a global sensation. His charisma and marketability set him apart from other athletes. His partnership with Nike was taking shape, and the Air Jordan sneaker line would eventually become one of the most iconic in sports history. His commercial appeal was undeniable, and even as a rookie, Jordan was capturing the world's attention in ways that went far beyond basketball. But for Jordan, the most important thing was always the game. Fame was a byproduct of his success, but it was the pursuit of greatness, the desire to win, and the need to prove himself that fueled him. During his sophomore season in 1985-86, Jordan elevated his game even further. His scoring numbers were off the charts, and he became the focal point of the Bulls' offense. But even with his individual brilliance, the team still struggled to find success. Jordan's 37.1 points per game that season were a testament to his scoring ability, and he had become the most dominant player in the league in terms of individual production. But the Bulls were still failing to make a significant impact in the postseason. The franchise's inability to surround Jordan with the necessary talent to compete at the highest level was becoming more evident. Despite the team's struggles, Jordan was becoming an even better player. His work ethic was unmatched, and he took every opportunity to improve his game. His scoring was extraordinary, but he was beginning to understand the nuances of the game that would elevate his ability to lead his team. Jordan became a more complete player, working on his defense and playmaking. While his offensive game was already lethal, he realized that in order to win championships, he would need to do more than just score. He had to create opportunities for his teammates, get them involved, and make them better. Jordan's rise to superstardom continued, but the team around him remained inconsistent. The Chicago Bulls were far from a championship contender. The team had talent, but it lacked the cohesion, the mental toughness, and the necessary pieces to truly compete with the league's elite teams. It wasn't until the arrival of coach Phil Jackson in 1989 that everything began to click. Jackson, who had a unique approach to coaching, would provide the structure and leadership the Bulls needed. His implementation of the triangle offense, a system that emphasized spacing, teamwork, and selflessness, was the catalyst for Jordan's next level of growth as a player and leader. Jordan had already developed into a force of nature, but under Jackson's system, he learned how to maximize his abilities while also trusting his teammates. It was this trust, in particular, that would become the defining element of Jordan's career. He had always been a scorer, but now he was becoming a playmaker, someone who understood that championships were not won by individual performances alone. They were won by teamwork, by putting egos aside, and by trusting in one another's strengths. In the 1989-90 season, Jordan's game reached new heights. He was still putting up astronomical numbers, but now he was also bringing his teammates along for the ride. He averaged 33.6 points per game, but his ability to set up others, his leadership on the court, and his relentless drive were starting to shape the Bulls into a contender. The Bulls made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, facing the Detroit Pistons, the team that had been their nemesis for the past few seasons. The Pistons' physical play had been a barrier Jordan couldn't overcome. But this time, things were different. Jordan was no longer just trying to carry the Bulls alone. He was trusting his teammates, and they were responding. The 1990 Eastern Conference Finals became a defining series in Jordan's career. The Pistons were still the bad boys, and their defense was just as brutal as ever. But Jordan was ready. He wasn't intimidated by their tactics anymore. He was confident in his team, and he was determined to get over the hump. The Bulls fought hard, but ultimately, the Pistons' experience and physicality proved too much. The Pistons won the series in 7 games, but Jordan had taken a massive step forward as a player. His leadership was clear, and he had proven that he was capable of taking on a team like the Pistons head-to-head. It wasn't just about scoring, it was about taking control of the game in every possible way. Despite the loss, Jordan's evolution was undeniable. The next year, the pieces finally began to fall into place. The Bulls were ready to compete for a championship, and Michael Jordan was more prepared than ever to lead them to glory. He had learned that individual greatness was not enough. He needed a team, and with the right pieces in place, he knew that the Bulls were ready to take the next step toward greatness. This would be the year that the Bulls finally broke through, but the true test of Jordan's greatness had only just begun. From individual brilliance to becoming the leader of a championship-caliber team, Michael Jordan's journey was reaching its peak. With his growth as both a player and a leader, he was now poised to take on the greatest challenge of his career. His determination and work ethic were the foundation of his legacy, and his ability to adapt and trust his teammates would prove to be the key to unlocking the Bulls' full potential. As the next season approached, the world would soon see the beginning of the Chicago Bulls dynasty, and Michael Jordan's quest for championships would take center stage. The 1990-91 NBA season marked a dramatic shift for Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. After years of individual success, frustration, and playoff heartbreak, Jordan was ready to take his game, and his team, to the next level. The Chicago Bulls were no longer just a team with a superstar, they were a team with the potential to win championships. Jordan's evolution as a player and leader had positioned him for something even bigger than personal accolades or individual records. It was time to prove that he could lead a team to a title and create a lasting legacy with the Chicago Bulls. It all began with the arrival of Phil Jackson as head coach. Jackson, who had spent years as an assistant coach under Doug Collins, brought a unique philosophy to the team. The triangle offense, which was introduced by Jackson and assistant coach Tex Winter, emphasized spacing, unselfish ball movement, and teamwork. For Jordan, who had always been an explosive scorer, this system would force him to trust his teammates and play a more complete game. The triangle would not just rely on one player to carry the offense, it would involve every player on the court. Jordan had always been a player who thrived on taking control, but Jackson's system required him to be a facilitator, to move the ball, and to allow his teammates to step up and contribute. At first, Jordan was hesitant. He had always been the focal point of the offense, the go-to player in clutch moments. The idea of relying on others was something new to him, and it took time for him to fully embrace the concept. But Jordan was never one to shy away from challenges. He quickly bought into the system, and it wasn't long before the Bulls started to gel as a team. Jordan's scoring ability remained elite, but his all-around game began to improve. His passing, his leadership, and his defensive intensity made him a more complete player. And most importantly, he began to trust his teammates. Scottie Pippen, who had already shown flashes of brilliance, took on a bigger role, and his growth as an all-around player would be a key to the Bulls' success. In the 1990-91 regular season, the Bulls finished with a 61-21 record, the best in the NBA. The team's success was a testament to the implementation of Jackson's system and the growth of Jordan as a leader. It wasn't just about scoring anymore, it was about building a team-oriented approach that would carry them through the playoffs. Jordan's ability to play both ends of the floor, his leadership, and his newfound trust in his teammates made the Bulls a formidable force. The team wasn't just relying on Jordan's scoring, they were relying on the whole group to contribute. The result was a well-balanced and cohesive unit that was ready to take on anyone. The playoffs, however, would prove to be the ultimate test. The Bulls faced the defending Eastern Conference champion Detroit Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals, and the rivalry between the two teams was as fierce as ever. The Pistons, known for their bad boy style of play, had bullied Jordan in previous years, using physical defense to wear him down. For years, the Pistons had been the team standing between Jordan and the NBA Finals. They had knocked the Bulls out of the playoffs in the previous 3 seasons, and their strategy had always been clear: stop Jordan at all costs. But this time, things were different. Jordan wasn't just a scorer anymore, he was a leader, and his teammates were ready to step up. The Bulls faced a tough, physical Pistons team that had beaten them in each of the last 3 years. The series was an all-out war, with every game hard-fought and full of emotion. The Pistons, led by Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, and Dennis Rodman, were determined to defend their crown. But Jordan's approach was different. He had worked on his game in the offseason, refining his skills and his mental approach. He wasn't going to let the Pistons' physicality be a barrier anymore. He had his teammates, and he had his new trust in the system. Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals would be the moment that changed everything. With the Bulls trailing 2-1 in the series, Game 4 was crucial. The game was a dogfight, and it was clear that the Pistons weren't going to give in easily. But Jordan was a man on a mission. He was more aggressive than ever, pushing through the Pistons' physical play and leading the Bulls to a 108-105 victory. The defining moment came in the fourth quarter, when Jordan, exhausted but determined, hit a clutch shot to give the Bulls the lead. The Bulls had finally broken through. They were no longer the underdogs, they were a team that could beat anyone, including the Pistons. The Bulls won the series in 4-2, and they were headed to the NBA Finals for the first time in Jordan's career. For Jordan, it was the culmination of years of hard work, growth, and overcoming adversity. The Pistons, who had tormented him for so long, were finally out of the way. Jordan had grown as a player and as a leader, and his team was now built for success. In the 1991 NBA Finals, the Bulls faced the Los Angeles Lakers, led by Magic Johnson. The Lakers were a storied franchise with a long history of success, and Magic Johnson was the face of the NBA. The finals were set up to be a clash of titans, with Jordan's Bulls looking to prove that they were the next dynasty in the NBA. Game 1 of the finals was a statement. Jordan put up 36 points, and the Bulls took a commanding 1-0 lead. Jordan was on fire, but it wasn't just about his scoring. His leadership, his ability to involve his teammates, and his defensive effort were all on display. He wasn't just the best player on the floor, he was leading his team to victory. The Bulls won the series in 5 games, capturing their first NBA championship. Jordan was named Finals MVP, and it was clear that the Chicago Bulls were no longer just Michael Jordan's team, they were a team with a championship pedigree. Jordan's ability to lead, to adapt, and to trust his teammates had carried the Bulls to the top of the NBA. It was the first of many championships, and it marked the beginning of a new dynasty in basketball. For Jordan, the victory was both a personal and professional triumph. After years of being criticized for not being able to win the big one, he had proven to everyone that he could not only win but also lead his team to the ultimate goal. Jordan had always been a fierce competitor, but this title showed that he had evolved into a leader, someone who could take his team all the way. The Chicago Bulls were now the team to beat, and Michael Jordan was the face of the NBA. The 1991 championship was just the beginning of Jordan's legacy. It wasn't just about the hardware or the accolades, it was about the way he played the game and the way he led his team. The foundation had been laid for a dynasty, and the Bulls were ready to dominate the NBA for the next decade. Jordan's hunger for greatness was far from over, and as the Bulls celebrated their victory, Jordan knew that the best was yet to come. The road to greatness was long, but with his teammates, his leadership, and his relentless desire to be the best, there was no limit to what they could accomplish. The 1992-93 NBA season marked the beginning of Michael Jordan's true dominance in the league, but it also brought the challenge of maintaining his newfound championship pedigree. After securing his first NBA title in 1991 and proving that the Chicago Bulls were no longer just Jordan's team, the stakes had changed. Now, Jordan was not only expected to lead his team to more championships but to keep the Bulls as the best team in basketball. That meant evolving once again and showing the world that winning the first title wasn't just a fluke, it was the start of something special. As the new season began, the pressure was immense. Jordan, who had already carried the weight of expectations throughout his career, was now the face of the league, and every move he made was scrutinized. Yet, he remained laser-focused. The 1992-93 Bulls had become a deeper, more balanced team. The addition of veteran players like John Paxson, Steve Kerr, and a blossoming Tony Kukoc provided the Bulls with the depth they had lacked in previous years. But the heart of the team remained Michael Jordan, and everything ran through him. The season's early games showed no signs of weakness. Jordan continued to play at an absurd level, but this time, he wasn't alone. Scottie Pippen had taken his game to another level. His defense, ball handling, and playmaking ability had grown, making him the perfect complement to Jordan. He was the glue that held the team together, and together, they formed one of the most dominant duos in NBA history. Pippen was no longer just Jordan's sidekick, he was a legitimate star in his own right. The chemistry between the two was undeniable, and their synergy on the court was unmatched. By the time the 1992-93 regular season ended, the Bulls had a 57-25 record. Jordan's numbers were once again mind-blowing, averaging 32.6 points per game while also contributing heavily on defense and playmaking. But this season wasn't about the individual statistics, it was about proving that the Bulls could win consistently and with efficiency. They were now a well-oiled machine, able to win both through Jordan's brilliance and through the contributions of their supporting cast. However, with the pressure to repeat came the reality of defending a title. The competition had gotten tougher. Teams like the New York Knicks, Miami Heat, and the aging but still dangerous Detroit Pistons were all vying for the throne. The most pressing challenge, however, would come from the Phoenix Suns, who had emerged as the West's powerhouse under coach Paul Westphal and the leadership of Charles Barkley. Phoenix, led by the MVP Barkley, boasted a potent offense and had the defensive grit to match it. But for Jordan and the Bulls, their toughest opponent was always themselves. Could they stay focused through the grind of a long season, the distractions of fame, and the pressure to win again? As the playoffs began, the Bulls faced a familiar foe in the first round, the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavaliers had given the Bulls trouble in the past, with players like Brad Daugherty and Mark Price making life difficult. But this time, Jordan was prepared. The Cavaliers had no answer for Jordan's scoring ability, and he dominated throughout the series, leading the Bulls to a 3-0 sweep. It was a clear statement from the reigning champions that they were ready to defend their title. Jordan wasn't going to let the past failures of his teammates or the difficulty of previous seasons affect him. He was a new kind of leader, one who had learned how to elevate his team around him. The next challenge came in the Eastern Conference semifinals against the New York Knicks. The Knicks, known for their tough, physical defense and aggressive style of play, were not a team that would be easily intimidated by Jordan and the Bulls. But the Knicks were also a team with some internal struggles. Players like Patrick Ewing were still learning how to carry a team deep into the playoffs. The series was hard-fought, and the Knicks tried to play Jordan and the Bulls with physicality. But Jordan's resolve only seemed to grow stronger. The Knicks did everything they could to slow down the Bulls, but Jordan remained untouchable. He was the driving force behind the Bulls' offensive attack, and he continued to prove that he could carry his team when needed. The Bulls would win the series 4-2, advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals. The 1993 Eastern Conference Finals saw the Bulls face an old rival, the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons had given Jordan and the Bulls trouble for years, especially with their physical, no-holds-barred style of defense. Led by Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer, the Pistons had a chip on their shoulder and weren't going to let the defending champions push them aside easily. The series was expected to be brutal, and it did not disappoint. But this time, the script was different. Jordan had matured, and so had the Bulls. They were no longer the team that was intimidated by the Pistons' physicality. They had a toughness of their own now, and they were more than capable of matching the Pistons' intensity. The series went to 6 games, but this time, the Bulls had the upper hand. Jordan dominated the Pistons both physically and mentally. The Bulls defeated Detroit 4-2, and for the first time, the Pistons' reign over the Eastern Conference was officially over. Jordan had conquered his nemesis, and with that victory, he and the Bulls were one step closer to repeating as champions. In the 1993 NBA Finals, the Bulls faced the Phoenix Suns, a team that had been one of the league's best throughout the regular season. Charles Barkley, the league MVP, was playing the best basketball of his career, and the Suns had a high-powered offense capable of matching the Bulls. It would be a clash of titans. The first 2 games were in Phoenix, and the Suns took the series lead, but the Bulls quickly regained control when the series shifted to Chicago. Jordan's leadership was on full display. The games were intense, but Jordan wasn't backing down. He scored 40 or more points in 3 of the finals games, including a legendary performance in Game 4, where he dropped 55 points. The series was tight, with each team answering the other's punches, but the experience of the Bulls and Jordan's unwavering leadership proved to be too much for the Suns. Jordan's performance in Game 6, where he scored 33 points and clinched the victory, capped off his 3rd championship in as many years. The Bulls won the series 4-2, and Jordan was named Finals MVP for the 3rd consecutive year. It was another crowning achievement for Jordan and the Bulls, solidifying their place in NBA history. After the victory, Jordan sat back and reflected on what he had accomplished. 3 straight championships, 3 consecutive Finals MVPs, and a legacy that was beginning to be cemented. But while the championships were the ultimate goal, Jordan knew that there was more to the journey. As the summer began and the celebrations wore down, Jordan's focus would shift. He had already done what many believed was impossible. He had created a dynasty, but in his mind, the hunger for greatness remained. There was always the next challenge, the next game, the next season. For Jordan, success was never about being complacent. It was about pushing forward and finding new ways to be the best. The world would soon see if his drive would ever wane or if Jordan could continue to elevate the Chicago Bulls to new heights. As the dust settled from another championship, the stage was set for Jordan's legacy to continue growing, with more moments of brilliance yet to come. The 1993-94 NBA season was one of significant change for Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. Just as the dynasty seemed unstoppable, a shockwave rippled through the basketball world. In an unexpected turn, Michael Jordan, fresh off 3 consecutive championships and his third Finals MVP, announced his retirement from basketball in October 1993. The timing stunned the league. At the height of his career, at just 30 years old, Jordan was stepping away from the game he had redefined. The reasons were deeply personal. His father, James Jordan, had been tragically murdered earlier that year, and the weight of grief had pushed Jordan to seek a new direction. For a man who had always been driven by the game, the loss of his father left a void that could only be filled by stepping away from the sport that had consumed him. At the time, no one could have predicted that Jordan's decision to retire would be more than just a brief hiatus. But the pain of losing his father, coupled with the growing fatigue from the intense pressure that had followed him since his rise to superstardom, made basketball seem like a distant world. Jordan wasn't just tired of the game itself, he was weary of the demands of fame, the constant pursuit of perfection, and the emotional toll of trying to win championship after championship. The sport that had been his life, his identity, had become something else altogether, and at that moment, he needed a break. Jordan's retirement left a massive gap in the NBA. The league had built itself around him, his marketability, his mystique, and his basketball brilliance had transcended the sport. His absence wasn't just felt in the box scores, it was felt in the arenas, on the streets, and across the global stage. The Chicago Bulls, who had just completed one of the most dominant runs in NBA history, suddenly found themselves without their cornerstone player. The team still had the core that made them champions, Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, and others, but it was clear that Jordan's leadership and presence could not be replaced. In the absence of Jordan, Scottie Pippen stepped into the leadership role. Pippen, who had always been Jordan's right-hand man, now had the chance to showcase his own abilities as a star. Without Jordan to defer to, Pippen flourished. He took on a larger role as the team's primary scorer, playmaker, and leader on both ends of the court. He led the Bulls to a 55-27 record and played arguably the best basketball of his career. It was a testament to his growth as a player and a leader. But while Pippen's performance was impressive, the Bulls were still not the same without Jordan. The absence of their superstar was keenly felt in the playoffs, where the team lost to the New York Knicks in the Eastern Conference semifinals. The loss highlighted the Bulls' dependency on Jordan. Despite Pippen's heroics, the team fell short of its goal of defending the championship. Meanwhile, Jordan sought peace and purpose outside of basketball. The game that had been his entire world no longer held the same allure. Instead of returning to basketball immediately, he pursued his father's dream for him, baseball. It wasn't just a decision to play a sport, it was a decision to reconnect with something deeper within himself. His brief stint with the Birmingham Barons, the Double-A affiliate of the Chicago White Sox, was a way for Jordan to grieve, to clear his mind, and to step away from the fame and pressure of basketball. The transition wasn't easy. Baseball was a much different game, and Jordan's performance was inconsistent. He batted just .202 with 3 home runs in his first and only full season in the minors. But even in baseball, Jordan's competitive spirit burned bright. He worked tirelessly to improve, showing the same commitment to mastery that had made him a legend on the basketball court. Yet, despite his effort, the sport was no longer a source of fulfillment. Baseball didn't fill the void left by his father's passing, and Jordan soon realized that basketball was where he belonged. In March 1995, Jordan made his return to the NBA. The announcement was met with both excitement and skepticism. Could he come back after more than a year away from the game? Could he reclaim the same level of dominance that had made him a global icon? Jordan's first game back, against the Indiana Pacers, saw him wear the number 45, his father's number, as a tribute. While Jordan didn't immediately return to his MVP form, his presence was undeniable. He scored 19 points in his first game back, and while his conditioning wasn't quite up to his previous standards, the basketball world knew that Michael Jordan was back. Jordan's comeback came in the middle of the 1994-95 season, and while the Bulls were still a strong team, they weren't the same juggernaut they had been with him. The team struggled at times with the adjustment of integrating him back into the lineup. It wasn't just about getting Jordan back on the court, it was about recalibrating the entire offense, finding a rhythm that worked for everyone, and getting Jordan back to peak form. Yet, even though his return was not without its growing pains, the spark that Jordan provided was evident. His leadership, his presence, and his ability to influence the game were back in full force. The end of the 1994-95 season came with the realization that while Jordan was still one of the best players in the world, the team needed time to adjust. The Bulls faced the Orlando Magic in the Eastern Conference semifinals, a team that had emerged as a new threat in the East. With Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway leading the charge, the Magic were poised for a deep playoff run. The series went to a shocking conclusion as the Magic defeated the Bulls 4-2. Jordan, despite his scoring, had been unable to carry the team past Orlando. For the first time in years, the Bulls were eliminated in the second round, and the loss sparked questions about Jordan's ability to reclaim his former dominance after his time away. Yet, this setback proved to be just another challenge for Jordan, and just as he had with every other obstacle in his life, he would rise above it. The 1995-96 season became the beginning of a new chapter. The core pieces were in place, but the addition of key players, such as Ron Harper, Steve Kerr, and Tony Kukoc, brought depth to the team. The biggest change came from within. Jordan, now fully back and in peak condition, was ready to lead the Bulls once again. Under coach Phil Jackson's guidance, the team regained its rhythm, and the Bulls became a well-rounded machine. The 1995-96 season ended with a remarkable 72-10 record, the best in NBA history at the time. Jordan's performance was nothing short of legendary. He averaged 30.4 points per game and led the Bulls to their fourth NBA championship. Jordan had reclaimed his place at the top of the basketball world, and the Bulls had reasserted themselves as the team to beat. It was clear that Michael Jordan was not just back, he was better than ever. The 1995-96 season served as a reminder that no matter the setbacks, no matter the challenges, Jordan's desire to win and his ability to lead were unparalleled. The dynasty was once again in full force, and the road ahead would be paved with more championships, more challenges, and more unforgettable moments. The 1996-97 NBA season was a continuation of the Chicago Bulls' dominance, and for Michael Jordan, it represented a deeper refinement of everything he had worked toward since his return to basketball. The previous year's record-breaking 72-10 season and subsequent championship had proved that the Bulls were the league's most dominant team, and Jordan was the engine driving that success. But as always with Jordan, the desire to keep improving was never satiated. The 1996-97 season wasn't just about maintaining the championship momentum, it was about proving that the Bulls' success wasn't a one-time achievement but the beginning of a dynasty. And for Jordan, it was about showing that even after all he had accomplished, he could still grow as a player and a leader. Heading into the season, the Bulls had retained their core of players, Scottie Pippen, the versatile forward who had become a star in his own right, and the ever-dependable players like Steve Kerr, Tony Kukoc, and Ron Harper. The addition of a talented center like Luke Longley gave the team more size, and of course, Phil Jackson was still at the helm as the coach, implementing his trademark triangle offense. While the team had proven they could win together, this season was going to require further cohesiveness and an even more heightened sense of focus. Jordan had always thrived on challenges, and now his challenge was to repeat as champions, while keeping the team united and sharp. From the start of the season, Jordan seemed determined to take his game to the next level. His shooting was sharper, his defense even more intense, and his leadership even more commanding. His scoring was as prolific as ever, and his ability to close out games in clutch situations continued to set him apart from everyone else. But Jordan's game was no longer just about his scoring. Over the past few years, he had learned the value of involving his teammates, and his unselfishness was evident as he set up his teammates for easy baskets. He was a far more complete player than he had been earlier in his career. The moment the ball left his hands, it felt like the game had been decided. Even when the Bulls weren't at their best, it was always clear that Jordan had the ability to step up and lead the way. As the season progressed, it became clear that the Chicago Bulls were in a class of their own. The team's 69-13 regular season record was second only to their own record from the previous season, and once again, they were the best team in the league. Jordan's individual numbers were slightly down from the previous year, as he averaged 29.6 points per game, but that was mostly because the team had become more balanced. Pippen was scoring more, and players like Kukoc and Kerr were stepping up, giving the Bulls more offensive versatility. The season wasn't just a testament to Jordan's brilliance, it was also proof of the Bulls' evolution into a true team-oriented powerhouse. In the playoffs, the Bulls once again proved their dominance. In the first round, they dispatched the Washington Bullets with ease, sweeping the series 3-0. Jordan's leadership was unmatched, and his scoring ability was as evident as ever. The team's defense, particularly with Pippen's perimeter defense, was suffocating, and they overwhelmed Washington in every game. The Bulls' depth and versatility were evident, as they handled the Bullets without breaking a sweat. The next test came in the Eastern Conference semifinals, where they met the upstart Atlanta Hawks, a team that had been gaining momentum in the East. The Hawks, led by Dikembe Mutombo and Mookie Blaylock, were a gritty and determined team, but they were no match for the Bulls. The series was competitive at times, but Jordan was on another level. He averaged 32.3 points per game in the series and was the clear leader throughout. The Bulls swept the Hawks 4-0, continuing their dominant march toward the finals. In the Eastern Conference Finals, the Bulls faced the Miami Heat, a team that had some tough players in Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway. The Heat had become one of the best teams in the East, and they were determined to show they could dethrone the defending champions. The series was intense, and the Heat pushed the Bulls to their limits. Game 1 saw Miami steal a win in Chicago, but the Bulls quickly bounced back. Jordan was relentless in his pursuit of a second consecutive championship. He took over in Game 2, scoring 36 points, and the Heat had no answer for him. The Bulls took the series 4-1, and once again, Jordan's leadership was the driving force behind the team's success. The NBA Finals were set. The Bulls were poised to meet the Utah Jazz, a team led by the tandem of Karl Malone and John Stockton, two future Hall of Famers. The Jazz had been knocking on the door for years, but they had yet to make it to the finals. For the first time in many years, the Bulls faced a legitimate threat in the finals. Utah had a potent offense and was one of the toughest teams in the league. But they were still seen as the underdogs, and despite the Jazz's talent, the question remained, could they handle the pressure of facing the defending champions? Game 1 of the finals saw the Bulls take control early, with Jordan scoring 31 points and putting the Jazz on notice. But Utah, led by Stockton and Malone, came out strong in Game 2. Malone had an incredible 27-point performance, and the Jazz evened the series at 1-1. It was clear that the Jazz were determined to put up a fight, but Jordan wasn't going to let the Bulls fall behind. The Bulls went on to win the next two games, taking a 3-1 series lead and heading back to Chicago for Game 5. In Game 5, with the Bulls up 3-1, the stage was set for Jordan to take control once again. With his team leading, Jordan played a masterful game, scoring 39 points and securing the victory. In the final moments, as the game wound down, Jordan's leadership on both ends of the court proved decisive. His incredible performance in Game 5 clinched the Bulls' fifth championship in 7 years. Jordan was named Finals MVP for the fifth time in his career, solidifying his place as the greatest player in NBA history. The victory was another step towards cementing the Bulls' place in the NBA's history books. Jordan had proven that he could repeat and lead his team to victory under immense pressure. The Bulls were more than just Jordan. They were a team with multiple stars, excellent defense, and a coach who understood how to harness the team's potential. As the celebration began, it was clear that the Bulls' dynasty was far from over, and Michael Jordan was far from finished. He had just added another chapter to a story that had already transcended the game. There was still more to come, and for Jordan, the best was yet to come. His quest for greatness was far from complete, and the road to immortality would take even more determination, hard work, and team success. The 1997-98 NBA season marked the final chapter in the legendary career of Michael Jordan with the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls were chasing their sixth championship in 8 years, and despite the obvious wear of time and the media frenzy surrounding their impending breakup, Jordan's determination never wavered. This was a season full of highs and lows, as the Bulls aimed to solidify their place in basketball history with one more title. For Jordan, it was also a season of reflection. A season where every moment seemed to carry weight, every game had a sense of finality, and every decision was being watched by millions. But in his mind, nothing had changed. He was still the best, and this would be his last stand with the Bulls. As the season began, the team was still dealing with the cloud of uncertainty surrounding coach Phil Jackson's future. Jackson, who had led the Bulls to all 5 of their championships, was in the final year of his contract. Rumors swirled about whether he would stay or move on to a new opportunity. His relationship with general manager Jerry Krause had become increasingly strained, and it seemed unlikely that Jackson would return for another year. The uncertainty surrounding Jackson's future added to the tension within the team. But Jackson's coaching brilliance and ability to manage egos had already proved invaluable. It was clear that the Bulls needed him if they were going to win a 6th championship. Despite the off-court distractions, the Bulls entered the 1997-98 season with the same goal they had in every season: win the championship. Jordan, as always, was the leader, and his mindset remained razor-sharp. He still played with the intensity and fire that had defined his career, but now there was also a sense of urgency. This was the last ride, and Jordan knew it. His body, while still capable of performing at the highest level, wasn't the same as it had been in his prime. The toll of years of playing at such a high level, coupled with the physical demands of his training regimen, was starting to catch up with him. His knees were often sore, his body needed more recovery time, but his competitive spirit refused to let him slow down. Throughout the season, the Bulls were never the dominant force they had been in previous years. They won 62 games, a remarkable record by most standards, but it was clear that their level of intensity fluctuated throughout the year. Jordan's ability to lead by example never wavered, but it became increasingly clear that this team wasn't the well-oiled machine it once was. Players like Scottie Pippen and Tony Kukoc were still integral pieces, but there were moments of frustration, especially with Pippen, who was unhappy with his contract and felt underappreciated. The tension within the team wasn't as noticeable to the outside world, but it was there. The constant media attention on Jordan's impending retirement, along with the rumors surrounding Jackson's departure, created a sense of instability that threatened to derail the Bulls' quest for another title. But as the playoffs approached, the focus shifted back to the court. The Bulls faced the upstart Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, and while they were the favorites, it was clear that they couldn't just rely on Jordan's individual brilliance to get them through. The Pacers, led by Reggie Miller and a talented supporting cast, pushed the Bulls to their limits. The series was physical, hard-fought, and filled with tension. Miller, with his clutch shooting and trash-talking, became the focal point of the series. It was one of the most challenging matchups Jordan and the Bulls had faced in years. Miller's ability to get under Jordan's skin and hit big shots made the series unpredictable. However, Jordan's leadership was evident at every turn. Game 7 of the series would go down in history as one of the defining moments of the Bulls' dynasty. In what could have been a historic collapse, Jordan stepped up when it mattered most. His scoring, his defense, and his ability to execute in clutch moments were on full display. Despite the pressure, despite the intensity, Jordan kept his composure. The Bulls managed to close out the Pacers in an 88-83 victory, securing a trip to the NBA Finals. The finals would be a matchup with the Utah Jazz, a team that had finally reached the pinnacle of the Western Conference after years of near misses. Utah, led by Hall of Famers Karl Malone and John Stockton, had one of the best offenses in the league and had been a top contender for years. The Jazz were well coached, disciplined, and hungry for a title. For the Bulls, this would be their last challenge. Utah was no longer just a team to be respected, they were a team that could dethrone the Bulls if they weren't at their best. In Game 1 of the Finals, Jordan showed exactly what he was capable of. He dropped 31 points, and his leadership, both offensively and defensively, was crucial in securing an 84-82 victory. The Jazz, despite their talent, couldn't match the intensity and focus that Jordan brought to the game. In Game 2, the Jazz fought back, and Malone's dominance in the post gave the Bulls problems. The game was closer than expected, but the Bulls came through, led by Jordan's 37 points. The series was now 2-0, and the Bulls had taken control. However, as the series moved to Salt Lake City for Games 3 and 4, the Jazz would push back harder than ever. Game 3 was a defining moment. Jordan, dealing with the fever and the physical toll of the series, was visibly exhausted but refused to let the team fall behind. His performance in this game became legendary. Jordan was clearly not at full strength, but his determination pushed him through. He scored 38 points, and with less than a minute left, he made key plays that would eventually seal the victory for the Bulls. Jordan's ability to perform when he was less than 100% was a testament to his incredible mental and physical toughness. The Jazz had no answers for him, and with every game, the Bulls' confidence grew. Game 6 of the Finals would prove to be one of the most iconic moments in basketball history, and not just because of Jordan's play on the court. The so-called flu game, where Jordan, visibly sick and barely able to stand, played through his illness and led the Bulls to a 90-88 win, was the embodiment of everything Jordan stood for. He was not just playing for himself or even for the team, he was playing for the legacy he had built, for the fans who adored him, and for the history that would remember him. His 38 points in that game were miraculous, and the way he willed the Bulls to victory was an example of his unparalleled willpower. The image of him slumped over, barely able to walk, yet still pushing through, would become one of the most enduring images of his career. The Bulls had won their 6th championship, and Jordan was named Finals MVP for the 6th time in his career. The journey had come full circle. Jordan had returned to the league, fought through adversity, and led the Bulls to the pinnacle once again. As the confetti fell and the celebrations began, it was clear that this was the end of an era. Michael Jordan had not just proved that he was the greatest player of his time, he had solidified his place in history as the greatest player ever. The final buzzer had sounded, and Jordan had once again delivered when it mattered most. With the 1997-98 season behind him, Jordan's future remained uncertain. He had accomplished everything he set out to do, and while the Bulls dynasty had reached its peak, the world of basketball was about to change. For Jordan, it wasn't just about the game anymore, it was about leaving a legacy that would inspire generations of players to come. His final championship wasn't just another victory, it was the culmination of everything he had sacrificed, worked for, and dreamed of. Michael Jordan was not just a basketball player, he was a legend. And as the curtain fell on his final season with the Bulls, the basketball world would forever be changed by his legacy. After the 1997-98 season, Michael Jordan's basketball career appeared to have come full circle. The 6th NBA championship, the 6th Finals MVP, and another dominant performance against the Utah Jazz in the NBA Finals had confirmed what everyone already knew. Jordan was the greatest player to ever play the game. His journey, which began in the small town of Wilmington, North Carolina, had now reached its apex. He had achieved everything he set out to do in the sport, and his legacy was already cemented. But for Jordan, it was never just about winning titles. It was about proving something to himself, his teammates, and the world. And as the confetti settled after his final championship, Jordan knew the time had come to leave the game that had shaped his entire life. The decision to retire again wasn't easy. Jordan had already walked away once in 1993 after his father's tragic death and had returned with a vengeance. The physical demands of the sport, combined with the emotional toll of chasing greatness, had taken their toll on him. The 1997-98 season had been especially taxing. His body, though still capable of incredible feats, wasn't the same as it had been in his prime. The mental and emotional fatigue that had accompanied years of dominance was starting to take its toll. Jordan had given everything to the game, and while his competitive spirit still burned brightly, it was clear that it was time to move on. The media frenzy surrounding his retirement was overwhelming. Fans, teammates, and critics alike were left to wonder whether Jordan would return once again, but Jordan was resolute. He had nothing left to prove. 6 championships. 6 finals MVPs. His impact on the game, the culture, and the world was undeniable. But beyond the statistics, beyond the accolades, Jordan's true legacy was the way he had changed the game. He had redefined what it meant to be a champion, what it meant to be the best. He had inspired countless athletes, young and old, to push themselves beyond their limits. His work ethic, his determination, and his ability to rise to the occasion in the most crucial moments were a blueprint for success. Jordan's retirement was different this time. He wasn't stepping away because of tragedy or because of burnout. He was stepping away because he had accomplished everything he had ever dreamed of. He had proven that greatness was not just about individual talent, it was about leadership, teamwork, and resilience. His influence on the NBA and the sports world would continue to be felt long after he hung up his sneakers for good. While the basketball world mourned his departure, Jordan began to focus on life after basketball. He took on a new challenge, becoming the principal owner of the Charlotte Hornets. His transition from superstar to owner was met with mixed reviews. Many wondered if he could replicate the success he had on the court in the business world. But Jordan approached his new role with the same intensity he had brought to basketball. He was determined to build a successful franchise, one that could compete and succeed at the highest levels. While his time as an owner was marked by challenges, his impact on the NBA continued to be felt in countless ways. In addition to his business ventures, Jordan continued to expand his influence globally. His iconic Air Jordan brand, which had transcended basketball, became a cultural symbol. The shoes became more than just a product, they became a symbol of aspiration, hard work, and excellence. Young athletes everywhere wore Jordans, not just because they were stylish, but because they represented something greater. They represented the pursuit of greatness, the belief that anything was possible with the right mindset. Jordan's influence wasn't confined to the basketball court. His philanthropic efforts became a significant part of his legacy. He had always been generous, but after his retirement, he became even more involved in various charitable endeavors. He supported causes related to education, youth sports, and health. He also became an advocate for social justice and equality, using his platform to support initiatives that aimed to uplift disadvantaged communities. Jordan's philanthropy reflected the man he had become, someone who had achieved everything in his career but never lost sight of the importance of giving back. While Jordan had achieved greatness in every aspect of his career, it was his role as a father that defined him most in his post-basketball life. He had always been a devoted father, but now, as his children grew older, he embraced his family in a new way. His bond with his children, particularly his sons Jeffrey and Marcus, became a central focus of his life. They were the ones who kept him grounded, the ones who reminded him that there was more to life than basketball. Jordan's relationship with his family was the source of much of his strength, and his retirement allowed him to spend more time with them, enjoying the moments he had missed during his years of playing at the highest level. Jordan's story had always been about overcoming obstacles, pushing through adversity, and proving that greatness was not just a result of talent, but of relentless work and a refusal to accept anything less than perfection. His journey from a young, overlooked high school player to the greatest basketball player the world had ever seen was a testament to his mental toughness, his discipline, and his love for the game. Along the way, he faced setbacks, personal struggles, and fierce competition, but he always rose to the occasion. He didn't just play basketball, he changed it. As the years passed, Jordan's legacy continued to grow. He became a global ambassador for the sport, inspiring countless athletes, including future NBA stars like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James. His influence was immeasurable, and his impact on the game could be seen in every corner of the NBA. The Jordan effect was felt in the way players approached the game, in the way they trained, and in the way they understood what it meant to be great. When Jordan was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2009, it was the culmination of an extraordinary career. His speech, which reflected on his journey and the people who helped him along the way, was a fitting tribute to a career that had redefined basketball. As he stood there, the man who had once been cut from his high school team and told he wasn't good enough, now stood as the greatest player in NBA history. It was a moment that felt like a perfect conclusion to his playing career, but it wasn't the end of his story. The lessons he had taught the world, the inspiration he had provided to generations of athletes, would continue to resonate long after he left the court. Michael Jordan had walked away from basketball 6 times over the course of his life, but his legacy would never retire. It was eternal. His story was no longer just about the 6 championships or the countless individual accolades, it was about the mindset he instilled in the game. The spirit of never giving up, of always striving for greatness, would be passed on through every player that followed in his footsteps. And so, with the final buzzer long past and the roar of the crowd now a distant memory, Michael Jordan's impact on the game, the sport, and the world remained as strong as ever. He had built something that would last forever. His legacy wasn't just about the titles or the records, it was about how he made the game better, how he made everyone around him better, and how he inspired the world to believe that greatness was not just something you were born with, but something you earned. Michael Jordan didn't just change the game of basketball. He changed the world.